My favorite anime is Fruits Basket, 2001. Basically, I can't share that my favorite anime is the old Fruits Basket without someone asking if I've seen the new show, which you have to understand is a hard life to live for a hater such as myself. It's easy to understand why Fruits Basket 2001 is my favorite. I grew up with it, I've been watching the show since I was really little, I watched it with my mom, and I've seen the show dozens of times. What's not easy to understand, even for myself, is why I haven't decided to pick up the new show. Okay, it's not that I, refuse to or anything. I've considered watching it multiple times. There are just some aspects of the new show that put me off from it, because it's not just the story that I like from the original anime, it's everything. Of course I like the story, I love the story, but also the art, colors, music, directing, and from what I can tell, I prefer the old dub performances too. That's why, instead of watching all of Furuba 2019 Season 1 and comparing it to the 2001 adaptation, which would be very time-consuming if I actually wanted to go in depth, I've decided to just compare and contrast my absolute favorite scene from the original show, the Plum on your back scene, while simultaneously referencing back to the manga as well. First of all, both the 2001 and 2019 versions of the scene are more or less faithful to the manga. The basic information the scene is trying to get across is done so successfully both ways, but obviously there are some differences. Starting with the 2001 anime, the scene opens with a bird's eye shot of the house. There's silence, and then Kyo screams as the screen shakes.
What the hell is this?
This is something you'll see often with the 2001 adaptation. The show is more interested in building up the potential comedy of each scene, while the manga and 2019 adaptation are less focused on that. For example, in the manga, the implication of Kyo being surprised enough that he yells so loud the house shakes is completely missing. He kinda just walks in and asks a question. Moving on, Kyo reaches for a rice ball and Toru attempts to warn him about the contents. Similar thing happens in the manga, and then Kyo asks her why she would make something like that, leading her to explain that they're doing it for a hit-or-miss rice ball stand for the school festival.
Why would you even make this crap?
Well, we're going to try a hit-or-miss stand, remember? So that one's a miss.
Kyo then opts for making his own rice balls, and Toru compliments his ability to do so, which he rejects.
Incredible, I had no idea.
Well, when I was out training, I had to make all my own meals and stuff. I just make the plain kind, nothing fancy.
Even so, I bet if we found someone who had devoted their whole life to the art of rice ball making and asked them, they'd still say they admired how well you do it.
Where the hell are you gonna find somebody like that?
Toru knows that Kyo has somewhat of an inferiority complex, so she tries to compliment him as best she can. But Kyo dismisses any attempts at this, leading her to wonder if he even realizes he has any good attributes at all. On that thought, we move on to the next point in the scene, where Toru is wondering why he can't see his own good points, staring at his back. There's a small drum noise as Toru's eyes focus on Kyo's back.
Why can't he see that himself?
Signifying her eureka moment for her analogy she's about to explain.
Maybe the reason you don't see it is that it's stuck to your back. What I mean is, a person's admirable qualities. They're just like, say, a pickled plum on a rice ball. In other words, the person's the rice ball and the plum's stuck to their back.
Throughout all the scenes we've watched so far, there has been silence and faint bird chirping as the only background noise, which I believe works well. Here, though, we start to hear the first bit of music fade in as she continues to explain her rice ball philosophy.
In other words, the person's the rice ball and the plum's stuck to their back. So, all over the world you could have rice balls made with all sorts of wonderful ingredients, all different flavors and shapes and colors. But since they'd be stuck in the middle of everyone's back, someone could have a plum and not even know it. They'd look at themselves and think, I'm so plain, nothing but white rice, even though it isn't true. Because turn them around and sure enough, there it is. There's the plum.
During this scene, we get a beautiful watercolor background with a simple cityscape drawn in. Compare it to the manga, where we just get visuals of tall buildings in a city that are meant to represent all the different people who live there. The watercolor with the children's book-like drawings put with the music really give a fairy tale-esque feeling to the scene in the anime, especially with Laura Bailey's soft voice and genuine delivery, like she's my mom reading me a story before bed. The next scene is very similar to the manga panel, showing Toru's gentle expression, eyes half-lidded as she continues her story. I really love her expression here, and I think it highlights one of my favorite aspects of Toru, at least in the 2001 adaptation. She's airheaded sometimes, sure, but she can also be incredibly wise, and it feels completely natural, especially in scenes like this. Her overwhelming kindness gives her a mature aura, almost like an angel or a goddess. Toru finishes her monologue by calling Kyo admirable, which is something she truly believes.
Yep, I can see it. I can see it very clearly, Kyo. You don't know it, but you have a great big plum on your back. Yuki's admirable in his way, and you're admirable in yours.
Okay, now that's definitely the dumbest thing I ever heard!
The reason Kyo has such self-esteem issues is mainly due to Yuki, so that's why Toru tells him that both him and Yuki are special in their own way. The director of the 2001 anime, Akitaro Daichi, also happens to be the sound director, and he does something very smart in this next scene that is missing in both the manga and the 2019 anime that I just really like. It's subtle, but very cool. So, Kyo is obviously embarrassed at the compliments from Toru, and at the end of the last clip you could see actual visible steam coming off of him because of it. In this next clip, the kettle goes off, and Kyo's red face is in the foreground as we hear the kettle boiling. Basically, Kyo in this instance is also boiling over emotionally. Keep in mind that the music from the rice ball story is long gone at this point, as we as the audience are meant to hear the kettle throughout the rest of the scene.
Oh, I'm sorry. We can change it to salmon if you want. Excuse me, I guess I left the kettle on the stove.
Hey.
Huh?
You've got one too. I mean, stuck to your back. There's a plum.
Kyo tells Toru that she also has a plum on her back, in turn becoming extremely emotionally vulnerable, at least for someone as standoffish as Kyo. This is a big moment for him as a character. Toru then tilts her head to the side, surprised that Kyo gave her a compliment like that, as the silence is broken by her theme.
There's a plum. I can see it.
You can see it?
Yeah, but it's really small, like a baby plum.
Baby plums are delicious.
No, it's way tiny.
Toru is really taken aback at first, but after processing what he said, she's really happy. A compliment like that from Kyo is super rare, and she knows that, and instead of teasing him or making a big deal out of it like other characters would, she just smiles and accepts it. Next, let's go through the same scene, but in the 2019 adaptation, and talk about the changes made. The 2019 scene starts off with very loud bird chirping in the background, before Kyo enters the scene and the cheerful background music track starts up.
The hell's going on here? Planning to start a rice ball business?
Oh, good morning, Kyo.
The bird chirping disappears as soon as Kyo is shown, and there is neither silence nor faint bird chirping for the rest of the scene, unlike in the 2001 adaptation. Personally, I find the background music distracting, partly because of how shit the mixing is. The music is just way too loud for no reason. I also think the background music is unnecessary for a scene like this, but that could just be my opinion. Either way, the mixing is bad. Continuing on, Toru and Kyo have a short dialogue about a scene that happens prior in the 2019 anime but is in a different order in 2001, so I'm skipping over it since it's irrelevant. Next, Kyo picks up one of the rice balls Toru is making. Keep in mind, she's making purposely gross ones mixed in with good ones for her class's hit or miss rice ball stand. Unlike in the manga or 2001 adaptation, Toru doesn't try to stop Kyo from picking up the gross rice ball, but actually encourages it for some reason.
I'm particularly proud of that one. You'll have to tell me what you think.
What are these?
Rice balls made with chives. So you don't like them then?
No way! I freaking hate chives!
I'm not really sure why this was changed. It seems out of character for Toru to purposely offer Kyo a gross rice ball, especially considering his reaction to it afterwards. I think this change was just a directing mistake, because you can't convince me that Toru would suddenly turn into fucking Sam Pepper and prank Kyo when that's totally not her personality. Side note, but there's some interesting translation discrepancies happening between all three scenes for the word nira in Japanese, which some translators interpret as leeks and some as chives. From my research, it seems that chives is the more appropriate translation, and that's why for the 2019 anime and the Yen Press manga version, the translation was changed from leeks to chives, and why the old versions, like the 2001 anime and the Tokyo Pop release of the manga, use leeks. I don't really have a reason for why the translation is different, because I guess they thought Americans wouldn't know what chives were, but would know what leeks were. That's my only guess. There's something else pretty important to the scene that the 2019 anime leaves out, which is present in 2001 and the manga, that being Toru just does not explain why she made the rice balls with chives. In the manga and 2001 adaptation, after Kyo asks Toru why she made them, which is a fair question because raw chives are a rather strange rice ball ingredient, she explains how she's experimenting with misses or duds.
Why would you even make this crap?
Well, we're going to try a hit or miss stand, remember? So that one's a miss. I can make something else for you if you have any ideas.
I don't know, salmon or cod's okay, I guess.
What are these?
Rice balls made with chives. So you don't like them then?
No way! I freaking hate chives! What's wrong with sticking to something normal like salmon or octopus filling?
However, like I said, in the 2019 anime, it's completely glossed over to Kyo why she's making these gross rice balls and then tricking him into eating his least favorite food. Moving on, just like before, Kyo decides to make rice balls for himself, and Toru notes how good he is at it. The scene is more or less the same as in 2001 and the manga, save for the differences in voice performances from the actors. I do want to once again point out how loud the background music is here.
You're great, really.
It's not a big deal. I had to make my own food while I was training. But just 'cause I can make it doesn't mean it'll taste good.
After that, Toru makes a similar comment about how a professional rice ball maker would be envious of Kyo's skills, and Kyo kind of just brushes her off, compared to the 2001 anime where he screams at her.
I think they would be very jealous of how good you are at it.
Rice ball training isn't something people do. Where do you even get these ideas?
They'd still say they admired how well you do it.
Where the hell are you gonna find somebody like that? I mean, come on, that's gotta be the dumbest thing that I ever heard.
I think the stark difference here is pretty funny. Before I discuss the next clip, I just want to play them back to back. I feel like that way it'll be easier to understand my points if the two clips are fresh in your mind. Roll the tape.
Why can't he see that himself? Maybe the reason you don't see it is that it's stuck to your back. Why doesn't he realize? I think I know. Maybe you can't see it because it's on your back.
Huh?
Now, some of you may have sat there and listened to those two clips and thought, wow, mimiyori, what the fuck are you even going to say? Those were basically the same. And to that I say, okay, fair. But you see, to me, they are totally different. The lines in each scene are delivered in exact opposite ways. 2001 Laura Bailey goes low.
Maybe the reason you don't see it is that it's stuck to your back.
And 2019 Laura Bailey goes high.
Maybe you can't see it because it's on your back.
They each set a completely different mood for the entire scene. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this could come down to preference. Some people may like Toru's new, higher, and more innocent-sounding voice, and it just happens that I don't. Either way, there is definitely a difference. The first clip comes off like Toru is very saddened by the fact that Kyo is completely blind to his good qualities, like she feels sorry for him. Then, the camera jumps to his back and you hear the drum sound, signifying her realizing what she's about to say. While she's vocalizing her thought, she talks slowly, a realistic way of showing that she's coming up with the idea right there and now. Compare that to the 2019 performance where there is no drum sound, and instead we zoom in on Toru's face as she gasps, which is obviously the moment where she comes up with her rice ball theory. I think jumping to Kyo's back with the drum is more effective. It almost feels like we came up with the idea with Toru instead of just watching her. Finally, we get to the climax of the scene, where Toru explains that everyone is sort of like a rice ball, where it's easier to see others' good points and not your own.
If a person is a rice ball, and what's great about that person is a pickled plum, the problem is the plum's on their back where they can't see.
First off, notice the lack of visuals for her short explanation in the beginning. The visual cues of the words good qualities and picture of a rice ball emphasized her words a lot better in 2001, making it easier to understand what she was saying right off the bat. Don't know why they left that out for the remake. Anyways, let's continue.
The plum's on their back where they can't see. Maybe everyone in the world is walking around with plums on their backs, all different kinds. No two of them are exactly alike. But since they can't see their backs, they can't see the plums that make them unique.
The music here is actually very beautiful. I love the piano and violin together. My only criticism of this moment is what's on screen. Instead of showing us a bunch of rice ball people with different shapes and colors of plums on their backs, we just get to look at a bunch of NPCs. The imagery of plums on all these random characters' backs make them look more like their souls, which I believe detracts from the point. Toru is more so talking about people's talents or good attributes rather than their entire soul, so I believe this imagery could be confusing. Conversely, 2001's interpretation of representing other people as rice balls, much like Toru is represented throughout the show, is a better way to communicate the point being made. The watercolor background here is just easier on the eyes than the black with the rainbow outline. I like the aesthetic 2019 chose on its own, but as mentioned before, 2001 makes me think of a children's fairy tale book, which is really effective. Next, let's compare the scene where Toru tells Kyo that she can see his plum.
So trust me when I say, I can see it. Plain as day, you have a plum right there on your back. Sure, Soma's great, but the thing is, so are you.
Honestly, I don't have too much to say for this scene, other than the music here is a little overbearing. In 2001, the background music for this scene is atmospheric but non-invasive. It doesn't force emotion like the 2019 music does. Although I said before that I enjoyed the 2019 track that plays behind the scene, it starts to lose me at the climax of the song. In 2001, the song uses higher notes at the end of the song to make the audience feel nice, and then it just ends, taking us back to the silence and faint bird chirping before the kettle goes off a few seconds later. But in 2019, after the climax, the song just keeps going. Like I said, I haven't seen the 2019 anime yet, so I can't really criticize anything that isn't this specific scene I'm analyzing today. But if 2019 is one of those shows that is extremely reliant on background music for every scene, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed. The use of silence with a strong script and acting is so much more effective at getting an emotional response out of me than just putting music behind it. Speaking of not seeing the 2019 anime yet, the fact that Toru opts to call Yuki Soma is a bit strange to me coming from the 2001 anime. It's possible that it's a translation difference, as Toru may have been used to calling him that after attending school with him before they knew each other, because obviously in Japanese it's normal to refer to most people by their last names as it's more polite. In 2001, Toru always calls him just Yuki, and at the very beginning of the show, Yuki Soma. In the manga, she calls him Soma, just as she does in the 2019 anime, so it seems as if the 2001 anime is the only outlier in this instance. It's not a criticism, I'm just pointing out the difference. I guess I do have something relevant to the script to actually criticize, that being the 2019 line, "Sure, Soma's great, but so are you," versus, "Yuki's admirable in his way, and you're admirable in yours." I liked the distinction Toru makes in 2001, where she's pointing out how they each have their own way of being admirable. Even though they're exact opposites, Yuki and Kyo shine in unique ways. In 2019, she just says they're both great, and the word choice of her saying in the beginning, "Sure, Soma's great," referring to Yuki, should just piss off Kyo completely. Toru complimenting Yuki so directly, the person Kyo hates the most, and then complimenting him right after would tick anyone off. Obviously, Kyo doesn't react to that, and the scene moves forward, but it's just some script thing that I noticed that I decided to nitpick here. And yes, saying someone's great and saying they're admirable in their own way are not the same thing.
Okay, seriously, where do you get these ideas? And why did you have to pick plums of all things for your stupid analogy?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Maybe I should have used salmon instead. Whoops, the kettle.
Hey. Huh? You've got one too, on your back. You know, a plum.
I have quite a lot to talk about with these last two scenes. First of all, Kyo's reaction to Toru's speech is a lot more toned down.
Okay, seriously, where do you get these ideas? And why did you have to pick plums of all things for your stupid analogy?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Maybe I should have used salmon instead.
Okay, now that's definitely the dumbest thing I ever heard. And what's so great about a stinking plum anyway?
Oh, I'm sorry. We can change it to salmon if you want.
He doesn't lash out at her like he does in 2001, causing him to immediately turn away out of embarrassment. Instead, in 2019, he turns around right after she smiles at him. In 2001, he makes a frustrated noise as he turns away, which I interpret as Kyo getting mad at himself for lashing out at her like that, because he's trying to manage his anger better. Then, as she gets him to take care of the kettle, he stops her to tell her right away that she's a plum. Partly, I believe, because he still feels guilty about yelling at her. In 2001, he slowly gets the words out, pausing a lot, and never turns around to look in her eyes. The silence, with only the sound of the boiling kettle in the background, emphasize the awkwardness Kyo is feeling here. But despite the uncomfortable feeling of letting himself be vulnerable in front of Toru, he pushes through anyway, for her. In 2001, this is a really big moment for his character. But in 2019, it doesn't really come off that way. He turns around to face Toru as he tells her that she has a plum, which indicates he's not having that hard of a time saying it. Not to mention my point earlier in the video where I explained how the sound of the boiling kettle pairs with Kyo's red face in 2001, showing he's boiling over emotionally, something that is missing from the 2019 adaptation, because Toru gets up right away and turns the kettle off, and Kyo doesn't say anything to her until after that's dealt with. Toru's reaction to Kyo complimenting her is also different in 2019. Instead of taking a second to process what he said, like in 2001, she immediately runs over to him excitedly, asking if he's sure. Let's watch.
I can see it.
I do? Really? Are you sure?
Yeah, it's only a little one, though.
In 2001, Toru is so surprised at what he said that she takes a moment to even react, repeating back to him, "You can see it?" After she says that, Kyo fires back with his baby plum comment, trying to backpedal a bit. He does something similar in 2019, but the reason for it is different. Toru is kind of prying him to tell her more, while in 2001 she just quietly smiles because she knows it was hard for him to say that, and doesn't want him to regret it by hounding him. So, that's it. That's the end of the scene. I know this video is pretty biased, but if anything else, if you're watching this and haven't seen 2001 yet, you should really check it out. I know it only covers a small part of the manga, and it doesn't get every detail exactly right, not to mention the original ending, which you either love or hate. I personally like it, obviously. But the show is incredibly impressive. All the small details that add up make the 2001 anime a really special experience. It's been my favorite anime for years, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Anyways, thanks for watching.